At the recent She Speaks Health events in Toronto, we held a fireside chat that explores what it takes to grow and keep customers in health tech. McCabe brings deep expertise in customer success with a focus on driving growth and long-term retention. She currently leads customer success at one of Canada's top digital health companies, overseeing enterprise-level partnerships. She's joined by Neelam Bance, whose career began in pharma and is now the founder of MedGeneius, helping bring pharmacogenetic insights to the forefront of healthcare. MedGeneius supports hospitals, labs, and providers in reducing adverse reactions from drugs, improving medication efficacy, and lowering the unnecessary costs in healthcare. Together, they unpack the often overlooked side of scaling, which is retention. Drawing from two different perspectives, Caitlin and Neelam share practical lessons from their experiences. Enjoy this one.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. This is what my hair looked like this morning. With the weather, this is what it turns into. All right, now we can banter. So I'll introduce myself. So I do have a career mostly on the commercial side of pharma, working across a number of different therapeutic areas. I heard that someone from PAB is here. So I know that they're... Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we did a lot of, as Francesca was talking about, a lot of healthcare marketing where we made our own detail aids and just did what we wanted. I'm just being funny. Because of the regulatory environment, you had to stay in the roles and focus more on B2HCP type marketing. So like you're talking to them about their patients. And then I started MedGeneius, which is a pharmacogenetic company, which basically takes your genes and can inform how you would respond to medications based on your DNA. So it is personalized medicine. But it's a different type of commercial marketing. So it's B to HCP as well as B2B, because these are big contracts. Because we're not a lab, we work with labs and companies that are actually doing the genetic testing, and we actually do the translation, the software translation, but then B2C as well. So it's a little bit different than it was in pharma. I am bootstrapped, working. But now I do everything. I do B to everything, including finance and everything as a startup, as a CEO. So yeah, that's me.
I think what you've built is so cool, Neelam. It's been great to get to know you through this process and meet so many of you in the audience tonight. I am a lifelong healthcare passion person, I suppose. I have not started my own business, but I've been with League for the last 4 years, supporting the scaling of their platform business. League is a digital health platform company, and we offer highly personalized, data-driven experiences to help healthcare organizations transform the way that their consumers and patients engage with them. So I've worked in my career across a number of healthcare verticals and functions and geographies even, but over time I've just come to love that kind of place where we're thinking strategically and doing the strategy, but also marrying that with the execution. And so that's my role at League, is to be driving growth and long-term value for some of our biggest customers, which is really exciting.
Awesome. So we heard this a few times. We heard this from Orchid just earlier, that the one thing that I heard a lot of when I went from pharma to startup land is that, wow, we're really great at building things in Canada, but we're not great at commercializing them. And Orchid said that. I'm wondering what your perspective is on that with respect to who we are in Canada, how we innovate, and how we actually commercialize.
Yeah, I think she captured it perfectly, and I agree that there's been this long-standing talk track around that and a mentality that we all need to collectively shift. But I can share my perspective, or recent experience actually, at League. Of course, in healthcare, we all typically look to the US, as that's where the money is, and the consumer market, and the market density. And League, we've been looking at US payers as our primary target for a long time. But in the past year or two, we've really built a really interesting Canadian customer base and Canadian pipeline. And it's been an interesting shift where we were able to get some traction using some of our anchor customers. And it is so exciting to be able to deliver solutions that impact our friends and neighbors in Canada. So I think it's just been a lesson for all of us to not diminish the possibility that exists in our own backyard.
Yeah, and I think I'm just going to add to what you're saying, I think there's such tremendous value because it is in your backyard. So you can like pilot test, you can pivot, you're right here.
Right.
And so there's such a benefit, and if you're speaking to like Canadian customers or it's like, I'm right here with you.
Right, exactly. You can see the impact very tangibly.
Do you find like that makes a difference, like being a Canadian company and the adoption of innovation in by Canadian like B2B or partners?
Working with those companies has just helped open so many doors, and to be here in the market, like we get on site with our customers no matter where they are in the world, and we'll talk a little bit about trust. I know it's been brought up before, but that's really the foundation of our great relationships.
Yeah. So I mentioned I came from pharma, and for those of you who are in pharma, you know that when you're about to launch a company, you start with your whole marketing team and your whole sales team. But when you are a startup and just have you and a co-founder, then generating sales or revenue is a lot different. You don't have a team, you're doing it all yourself, and I know some of the founders here can relate. So as an early stage startup, we're almost entirely focused on growth and getting the next sale. I will just do a plug that we are just signing our first contract, so we're going to be revenue generating. Yeah. And so we have
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But how do you feel, as with League being more established, about balancing growth versus retention and expansion, I guess, of growth within that customer subset? So how do you balance that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, especially when you're a new business, to try to close logos and get new sales and prove that your product has that product market fit that we were talking about earlier. But to be a really viable business, your customers need to be successful. And I think we don't want to sacrifice one for the other. So we've kind of learned this the hard way a little bit. We've had some experiences where some of our earlier customers were oversold, and we were so excited about the sale that they weren't necessarily successful on the other end, and creates great problems when you have customers at risk churning or being dissatisfied later down that customer journey. So now we're in a place where we're selling on value, and so we have teams in the pre-sales world, sales and solution engineering, that talk about the business value, so like the quantifiable ROI that we can deliver as partners, and then post-sales teams that work to bring that to life, and then my team kind of plays this bridge role between the two. But that driving that value and having that eye on value so that it's successful from sale all the way through customer, like that's what will set you up for renewals and growth within that customer, which is incredibly important for your business.
And that's great. And then just from the startup perspective, how would you, if you were giving me advice, how would you balance that? Like you're wanting to sell, you're wanting to get more clients, but then you're really wanting to deliver, that you have to deliver value, otherwise it's that's how you're going to expand. But then you're like, okay, how do I balance this? I'm starting up, and if they're startups, it's like, I need to grow, and I want to deliver value to this client or whatever, but my God, they're taking so much of my time. And there's one person, and I gotta make another sale. So how would you balance that?
Yeah. Well, you have to make sure that your early customers are the right customers for you. And one thing I think about is what's the difference between a vendor and a partner? And your vendor, you're making your sale, you're selling your products and services. But to be a true partner, you really have to be integral to your customer strategy. And I've been in places where I've been with people who say, we're not a vendor, don't use that word, we're a partner. And I'm like, are we really a partner though? Like, have we done the work to be integral to their strategy? And so that's something that I would sort of encourage early stage startups to think about, especially when you have needs out of that dynamic too. You need someone who's going to innovate with you or open a new market with you, and sort of have that strategic alignment.
That's amazing, and I'm just going to toot my own horn again. So this first client that we're starting an agreement with, he actually wants to talk to me about a strategic partnership. So he's like, I'd like to take this and be like a strategic partner. So he's asking me to be one. So I'm like, clearly did a good job.
Done something right. I think.
Tap myself on the shoulder. So when you're talking about there has to be a right fit, and I'm just going to call out Sigrid, who's the chair actually of the board of MedGeneius. So there is a potential client, and we know who this, what this company is, and I was like, do I go for it? I think that there's an opportunity where they want, but we're not sure if we love this client. But it's like, how do you balance? It's like, do I go? And, you know, she's like, just close your eyes and just make the sale. You know, what would you do in that stage, you know, like as an early company? Like, I know I'm going to do it, but let's be honest.
So you're saying it's the
right... Like, I'm asking, but of course I'm going to go after the business.
So it's the right business fit, but not the right personality fit, is what you're saying. Potentially.
Maybe philosophical differences, but I mean, but I'm here to be, you know, maybe in those cases, I don't know, maybe you say, I'm just going to be your service provider. Maybe not going to be the strategic partner.
Right.
Because maybe our values are not aligned, but I mean, I'm not going to turn away revenue.
Absolutely, yeah. But maybe there's an opportunity for you to empathize more with your customer, like get on site, take them, you know, spend that face-to-face time, so that they're not, you know, a real pain for you as you go forward. Because you know, the customer, you're going to want to interact with them and be comfortable with that. But
I mean, it is the reality, and like even in pharma, like you'd had that doctor that was like your biggest customer, but oh my gosh, like what a pain in your buttocks. But you're just like, I have to do, like, what am I going to do? Like, you do what they, you know. So it's kind of a similar thing. I'm answering my own question.
That's a good answer.
So, and I want to talk about that trust and the value. So you've now closed the customer, you've made the deal. How do you really ensure that you are, you know, making them still feel valued and trusted when it's like, great, I just closed this, you know what I mean? How do you actually prioritize that?
Yeah, I think the point of trust has been raised by all speakers because it is the foundation of our relationships. There's someone made a trust equation, and so the ingredients of trust are that credibility, reliability, and intimacy, which to me means that understanding of their strategy, their drivers, their objectives, and then kind of marrying that with yours. So doing that right over the long term is very difficult. So it's you know a sort of constant exercise with a wide range of teams that I go through to make sure we're maintaining that customer's trust. But there's also really little things that you do too, like I said, go on site, right? Spend that time in person. I think in our virtual world, we've kind of forgotten the value of actually just like having a coffee or having a lunch with someone. And in business and in customer relationships, that just goes such a long way.
Yeah. You are international, and MedGeneius is international too. We can go anywhere around the world, and yeah, we can be an amazing Canadian company that can commercialize globally. What are your comments or considerations about kind of doing business development or sales, retention, all that stuff here in Canada? You know, with partners that you know and you know the culture versus kind of like international clients. Like, how do you manage that to really be successful in international markets?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's awesome for MedGeneius as well, right? I think that one of my core career passions is to be growing Canadian innovation and commercializing it globally. So very cool to be in a room where lots of us are doing that. So yeah, at League, we are international. I was part of the first deal team that signed our first customer, which is in Australia, and we're expanding to new markets as well. So, you know, I think like probably all of you have experienced like similar tactics, right? But every customer certainly in new markets that you're entering, they want to know that you really want to be there, that you are really the right person for them, even though you're in a different country. And so that just takes research, that takes that really deep understanding of their market, their dynamics, their consumer dynamics, their business dynamics. You know, Gemini and other AI tools are a great way to really accelerate that understanding as well in the healthcare system in various markets. But showing up with that level of tailoring, that I think that's kind of the first fundamental step. And to be successful at League with our Australia deal, we spent weeks on site as well. So again, just emphasizing the in-person point.
Yeah. And speaking of value and tailoring, how do you manage price point? Like, you know, one country and what the value is and what people are what a partner would be willing to pay in Canada versus in another country, and how do you actually do that practically?
Yeah, and I'm interested in how you're approaching international markets as well.
I have no idea. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, I think I mentioned value selling earlier, and that's this, you know, that ties to value-based pricing. I also mentioned some customers that we've had in experiences where they've been oversold, right, because the price was not tied to the value. So that's the key, and ensuring that value is articulated for the new market. I think whether or not the market is a rich one or a poor one. It has to be tied to the value that you're delivering. Otherwise, like we've talked about, lots of risks down the line. So yeah, same philosophy.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I think like in the U.S., like I feel like there's a little bit more appetite to charge USD, which
right. But you could go in with that mentality. But again, if it's going to create a problem 2 years from now, where they're going to think, oh, I overpaid for this solution, then right.
I don't want to do that.
Break a trade-off. Yeah.
Yeah. With us, like being international, you could do that. But I don't know what. We have opportunities, for example, we're exploring South Africa, we're exploring India. I don't know so I guess I'll have to ChatGPT it.
Or get local market insight as well. So consultants on the ground or someone that could give you that inside scoop.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Can we give these two lovely ladies a big one? Two questions. So, yes.
My question is about healthcare use generally being sporadic. Somebody has a problem, they go on an app, they download an app, they use it, and then they're gone. And it's hard to make it sticky and to keep people on your platform. So you both handled a little bit B2C. So what's your advice in that regard? How to keep those users on your platforms?
Okay. That's a great question. League is B2B, but we are B2B2C. So it is very hard to keep it right, and our attention is very fragmented. I don't want to overuse the word value, but I think one thing to think about is what is the value of that engagement? Do you need people coming in daily, and what is that driving for your business? In healthcare, it is more sporadic, so perhaps monthly is what you're looking for, or is it a high value action that you're wanting to drive? So they're coming into the app, you want to drive them to a service or a follow-on action. So defining what the value of the engagement and the frequency of that and the dollar value attached, I think is one an important framing that you could consider.
Yeah, I would actually completely agree with you on that, and I think it is the value to the individual. Some people pharmacogenetics, maybe someone doesn't need to look at they're not taking a lot of drugs, so they don't need to look at their report. But if there's someone like me, I ended up in the hospital. I'm being dramatic, but I just had a high fever, and I was so I pulled it up then. But it's not like I take medications regularly. So I want to align my output or my value of my product that meets the needs of the end user, the B2C, like the customer, whether they use it once a year or once a month. But I want, when they pull that out and they need it, it could be like they've had it, they're going to their physician, or they're actually having surgery, that it's verified and is qualified and it's there and it's accurate. That's more a value I think that I care about, as opposed to how many times they open it up, open up their app or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Do we have a second question? Oh, yes, in the back.
The startup and health in general, or the biosciences, every research is advanced enough, and not every research is out. For example, there have been multiple occasions where they went through with the research, Alzheimer's, and then they discovered that the basis was fraudulent. So in terms of starting a company, when do you know that research is solid to start? You gotta have pharmacogenetics, right?
Yeah.
But how far are we with the pharmacogenetics to be okay, we know that this would work?
Well, I think that's the comfort level of the founder. You will see some founders that are just there is this. I was just in an event today, AI and data labs, and they're just I think there's this little tiny chance that this is going to be something, and we're fully in. Whereas pharmacogenetics is not a new science. I have many people ask me, they're like, "Did you make this up?" I'm like, "No, it's it's established science." So someone like me probably wouldn't do that. So I think it depends on the founder. And I think for you, let's say if you're okay, I have this idea. Obviously, you have to validate and stuff. But I think that there are many people, in the health tech world, who are developing this idea, this molecule. They haven't even tested it yet. It hasn't even gotten to early stage pharma. But they're I got this idea and I'm going for it. So
I think the timing is very important in terms of startup success? Because sometimes like there's a lot of companies that fail because their technology was pretty early, and then 10 years later, academia had like a lot more research, and then somebody else founded a company and they
For sure.
succeeded.
Yeah, timing is definitely an issue. I mean, when you asked the question about clinical trials, the only thought that was in my mind was that there are known statistical pass rates of drugs through clinical trials. So, like, you can base your assessment on that kind of risk adjustment by assuming this has a 10% pass rate of moving from phase 2 to phase 3, for example. So. Yeah, that was the only thought. Probably that's really out of my wheelhouse. I shouldn't have answered that question.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Can we give them one last big round of applause?
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. As a reminder, this podcast was recorded in front of a live audience at our She Speaks Health event in downtown Toronto. Scalpels and Spreadsheets covers the latest in healthcare innovation through events, media, and podcasting. The best place to check us out is our LinkedIn page, which is Scalpels and Spreadsheets, or our company website, scalpelsandspreadsheets.com. We'll see you at the next one.